Everybody knows that the Internet of Things is one of the big hot topics today. And on CXO Talk, episode number 91, we are going to explore the Internet of Things, and we're going to explore IT and OT, and we're going to learn what OT means and the connection to IT on CXO Talk. And I'm Michael Krigsman here with Vala Afshar, my co-host. Vala, how are you?
Michael, I just jumped out of my seat with that intro. I'm doing great. I'm super excited to have one of the smartest CMOs in any industry, in any geography on the show with us today.
Yes, we have Chris Hummel, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Schneider Electric, which is probably one of the largest companies that you are not familiar with their brand name. It's a huge company. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing very well. You make it sound like I shouldn't have a job with that intro.
Yeah. Well, you're a $30 billion company, so I guess there's a lot of work that's being done at Schneider Electric, and a lot of customers.
There is indeed. I mean, to give everybody a quick introduction. First of all, guys, great to be on the show. Thank you for having me. We are clearly a 25 billion euros, so we're in that 31, 32 billion euro size, or 32 billion US. It's primarily an industrial company that has focused on doing power management for the last 170 years. But over the last couple of decades, we've been buying a bunch of companies, building out our portfolio to where it's not just a power, sort of from plant to plug. It's more now industrial automation. It's sustainability services. It's everything from the light switches in your house to pipeline management. So we're really transforming into a technology company, and I think this is why it's interesting to talk about things like Internet of Things, convergence of technologies. What in the world is OT? Well, we'll get into that later, I guess.
So, Chris, can you give us a little bit of background information about yourself? For a number of years, I was a student of yours, so many of the work that I tried to emulate as a CMO is because I observed you rebrand a multi-billion-dollar company and bring a lot of excitement through digital marketing. So a little bit about your background, please.
Well, that's the first time anybody has said they're a pupil of mine, but as the Hummelite, thank you very much, Vala. For those of you, obviously, that are interested in this, I spent about 25 years in IT and communications. So 13 years with Oracle, living all around the world. Actually, my first job with Oracle was as the first direct sales rep in Kazakhstan, in the former Soviet Union. So lived in Eastern Europe for about 6-7 years, moved over to Asia for a while, came back to the U.S., went to SAP, one of our big competitors at the time, which was like going to the dark side, but went to SAP, had a great run there for a couple of years, another great company, big IT brand, and eventually where, Vala, you and I obviously met, but was at Siemens Enterprise Communications, where they were clearly going through a restructuring, joined them as the Chief Marketing Officer, got a chance to work with both of the board members there, all the owners, and we eventually rebranded it 1 year ago from Siemens Enterprise Communications to Unify, which, from a marketing side was obviously one of the pinnacles in my career. But a year ago, right after that rebrand, got an offer from Schneider Electric, to be honest, the company I'd never heard of, and just realized when I looked at the space of what was going on in energy, what was going on in sustainability, what was important in our lives, and the shifts in technology, I just couldn't turn it down.
So you have said a few times that Schneider Electric is transforming itself into a technology company. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Sure, happy to, Michael. So if you think about an industrial company, right, what we do is we primarily have come from the hardware side. Just like you would see the traditional sort of shift from in the IT space where hardware used to be DEC, right, back in the day, IBM, all that, were so powerful. It shifted to software, then it sort of shifted to solutions, and now it's gone off into cloud, it's gone off into all kinds of other things, and now, IT's gone in all kinds of different directions. Well, industrial technology has much longer life cycle, and we've kind of gone from that hardware where we would call it engineering So now the software and the solutions have become much more critical to what we do. So, for example, I bet you didn't know that Schneider Electric is roughly the 25 largest or 25th largest software company in the world.
Wow.
Right? We're a multi-billion-dollar software company. Did you know that we had a $300 million plus software as a service business? Right? Probably not. But
no, we did not.
this is something that, you know, what's happening in the OT space, which stands for Operational Technology, for those of you who want to know what the acronym is. For operational technology in that space, we are going through that similar kind of migration from hardware-centric engineering to now the software of managing the process to now the solutions of integrating it all together. And that's why, I mean, I think that's part of the why I'm here, part of why they, you know, we're looking for a profile like this, and part of that transformation to really a technology company that we've been undergoing basically for the last 10 years.
So massive company, products, many products serving global market, developed markets, emerging markets. How do you, as the CMO, build a culture where you can build a level of customer intimacy that's required in this hyper-connected era that we live with such a massive company like Schneider Electric?
That's a good question, Vala. And you know, one way is from a business strategy standpoint, we have a very, let's call it customer-centric approach in that we are really trying to be local, right? We are really trying to focus on being in front of the customer. So a lot of the things you would think about centralization or consolidation of manufacturing into one site or doing all those kind of things, we've actually built a strategy to be more dispersed. So we have manufacturing facilities all over the world. We have operations all over the world. It's a historically French company, but U.S. team, our U.S. market is our #1 market. China #2. France is actually #3. The management team, very international, based in 3 hubs in Paris, in Hong Kong, and here in the Northeast in the U.S. So first of all, I come into a culture which very much expects to be global, right? It expects to be in a decentralized but collaborative environment. So people are kind of ready for it. So, thank you. That was kind of a big walking in. And obviously, having lived in about 15 different countries over my career, and that I was of that mindset. The second thing is, coming from the technology world, I think I was a little more prepared to leverage technology to manage my own teams. So I'm actually not based in a location where most of my staff is. I have staff all over the world. I use obviously all the natural things we would think of in terms of those archaic tools like email and telephone, right? I'm not quite that social guy that some of you are, but nonetheless, you know, we use video is a constant infrastructure for us. So we use, you know, all the Polycom systems to kind of get around, and we make the investment in physically meeting. So our management team is the executive committee that I sit on for the company. We meet once a month, at least, physically, right? Even though we're all over the world, we meet once a month. And I use with my marketing team, you know, I really try and use those times to develop trust when we're face-to-face so that I can use all the remote tools to kind of manage as we go.
It's awesome to hear you say you're not as social because you're regularly on Twitter, you regularly blog, and you're a CMO of a $30 billion company, which, by the way, in my book, makes you incredibly social because the peers of yours who are in the Fortune 500 are not blogging regularly and are not on mainstream public social media. So I disagree with you. You're actually quite social. But anyway.
It's sort of funny you say that, right? Because I remember when I was at Siemens Enterprise Communications and had been there about a year, and somebody, you know, Unified Communications was going through that whole we're becoming social was becoming a key element. Somebody on a blog called me out, me and a couple of other executives of UC companies, and did an audit of how many tweets we had made. And at the time, I had done 5, right? So I was called out, never again, never again.
Well, you talk a lot about the convergence of IT and OT. tell us about that and the connection, the relationship to Internet of Things. So what's going on with that?
So the interesting thing here is, operational technology has really, and energy management in particular, and we're really a specialist, a global specialist in energy management and efficiency solutions. When you talk about energy, you're normally talking about resource management. Efficiency tools is what you want to use to get yourself towards sustainability, right? Sustained operations, better use of resources. But what's happening now is you have sensor technology going everywhere, which is really now collecting all kinds of new data. You have computing power, which is no longer just in the data center, but it's actually at the edge as well. So you have chips in almost everything we do. I mean, our circuit breakers, those things that you have in your garage, they're all now network enabled, right? They're all connected. They're all part of an infrastructure and a network. And then you have, of course, ubiquitous or near ubiquitous communications and connectivity, that now all of a sudden you're not just talking about efficiency, you're talking about whole possibilities of levels of understanding of new capabilities of productivity, efficiency, sure, but also new services you can provide, new levels of understanding of your business. You can maximize your supply chain even more. And so what's happening is, I wrote a blog called The End of IT, which made a lot of people not so happy. But the idea was not so much that IT is ending, but that IT is the way it's been used as a group of IT companies offering IT capability is shifting to where it's more companies like Schneider Electric that are offering IT capabilities as a core part of what we do. And so what we're seeing is this convergence of energy, connectivity and IT coming all together, and that really is the power of the Internet of Things. And the Internet is the connectivity. Well, we're the things guys, right? We're the people that go out there and manage all the operational elements. IT is about data, storage, manipulation, extraction, analysis. OT is all about making and changing the state of operation. So it's actually doing things. And when you combine the two together, all of a sudden kind of open up this whole new world of possibilities, capabilities, and whatnot. And so not something we're clearly going to do all by ourselves. No, we're going to do it through partnerships, but we see that as an enormous opportunity to bring those two worlds together, play with the kind of partnerships we have, and move forward to add value to our customers.
Chris, are you seeing a parallel between consumerization of IT and how the industrial infrastructure is becoming more and more connected?
You do. I mean, you see all the sexy stuff, right? We were talking before the show about Google Glass and Fitbit and all the kind of stuff that are now kind of getting the Internet of Things, and it's sexy and it gets all the attention sort of from the consumer space. But really what you're doing is now you're connecting that back into the core infrastructure, right? So if you think about your refrigerator can now order stuff, okay, well, your refrigerator can order stuff because it goes into a business processing system, right? It actually impacts the manufacturer, the food and beverage, whatever it is, order more, put it in the supermarket. So the consumer is, think about it as the access points, right? The consumer is kind of elevating the number of access points for the general population. But the real shift in our society, things we have to deal with, the threats that are going to come up, like cybersecurity and all this kind of stuff, those are all going to happen in the enterprise infrastructure, and that's where we're trying to play.
So what's the relationship then between IT and the people who are implementing these OT solutions? Because clearly the expertise that's required falls outside the bounds of a traditional IT department in many cases.
It does, and there's two angles I'll take on it. First of all, we have some great partnerships with some very good, IT and connectivity partners. So people like IBM, Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, HP. We have good partnerships with all those guys, Oracle, and many more. What's happening is the IT guys come from a different culture. They come from a culture of where availability is something that's important, but 5 nines is okay. Well, we come from a world where 5 nines isn't good enough, right? They've been going through Moore's law in IT, where everything has been shrinking, but the physics of electricity don't allow us yet to get the wire down or get the shrinkage or the that kind of thing. We're still dealing with more bulk stuff, and we're dealing with stuff that kills. Electricity is dangerous to manage. So what's happening is you have guys that are, even customers of IT are sort of bought or are let's say rewarded for innovation, whereas guys in the traditional industrial OT world are rewarded for not changing. And so you've got these two cultures that are now coming together that you want to push innovation forward, which is more of an IT mentality, but safety, security, reliability are not just want-to-haves, they're must-haves at a whole different level. That you've got this kind of culture clash going between the two, and it's going to require partnerships. IBM can't build a smarter city all by itself. It has to come to somebody like Schneider Electric to actually get it done, and vice versa. So that cultural piece, I think, is going to pull back. And then the buyers is kind of interesting, because traditionally the buyers for IT are obviously the CIO. CIO hasn't had that much to do in plant automation. He hasn't had that much to do in building management. But now all of a sudden, you can't have a building manager who doesn't understand IT. And so the CIO has both a risk and an opportunity, right? The risk is he's going to be moved out because he's going to be lessened and lessened. He's just doing the ERP, just doing the email. Or he has an opportunity where now all of a sudden he's not sitting on the fringe of the business. He's sitting right in the core of the operational elements of what makes, a food manufacturer a food manufacturer, a telecom operator a telecom operator. He's sitting right in the core of it. And so there's an opportunity for the CIOs actually to grow their influence as well.
So it sounds like, if you think about the roles of IT, you've got the core IT responsibilities of maintaining the network infrastructure and the systems, back office, front office systems. You've got the lines of business demand on the CIO and IT, folks like you and I, digital marketeers who are looking to spend a good, healthy portion of our program spend in marketing on technology. And then you've got the connected operational infrastructure part of the house. Is that where you see the three buckets that will consume majority of cycles from IT and the CIO?
Yeah, probably. I mean, certainly, there's going to be continually the infrastructure of IT and the transactional systems, right? And then there's now what's being called kind of the systems of engagement, if you want to go down Jeff Moore's angle, the engagement, the technologies that now you're into not just transactions, you're into interactions, right? And trying to manage that, which is where big data comes in. Okay, well, here's an interesting challenge for you, right? When you think about big data in the marketing side, it's because we're now looking at a volume of interactions dwarfs the number of transactions we do, right? Because for every transaction, there's multiple interactions. Well, now start thinking about something like a crane, right? So let's imagine Shanghai. There's one of these big cranes putting up one of these massive skyscrapers. There's a data center that's actually sitting in that crane. So we actually have built a data center. Why? Because the number of computations that needs to be handled to manage wind speed, velocity, weight, height above sea level, gravity, shift, angle, whatever it is, load, all those kind of things, and they have to be repeated constantly every millisecond and all that to manage appropriately for safety, reliability, performance, asset life cycle, all that kind of stuff. The volume of information that's now going to be spit out from these sensors about operational data, wow, I mean, that's, that it's unbelievable. So now all of a sudden, does a traditional CIO come in and go, yeah, okay, I can take that on, or do we now actually have to go even more into specialization with data scientists, right, and go down that whole real specialization angle on big data? And in fact, coming back to the question, if I can, about IT and OT, one of the interesting let's say, market, I don't want to say battles, but let's say market questions that's out there is, who's going to manage the operational data? Right? Transactional data, we know it's kind of the CIO generally who's managing. Who's going to manage the operational data? Is it going to come from the IT side, or is it going to come from the operational side? Because all that stuff I talked about, from the crane as the example in Shanghai and whatnot, that's spitting out all this operational data. And how do you manage the safety to make sure that the system, is in the safe mode and all? Boy, these are big questions for IT guys, marketing guys, operational guys, anybody who's looking at a broad swath of technology. These are big questions.
But Chris, because these questions exist and you're kind of sitting in the middle of it, don't you have to help guide your customers to address these issues? Are you in that position of having to do that?
We do, and it's something we've seen as a bit of a gap in the industry in general. And so we talk about efficiency savings or building towards sustainability, and we've started to really focus on our service offerings, our consulting offerings. In fact, a while ago we bought a company called Summit Energy, which did exactly this, right? Consulting in these kind of energy areas, and we now call it energy sustainability services. But it is because our customers are now telling us, hey, look, you can't look at this just from the technology side anymore. It's great that you understand everything we're doing and you're very localized. You have all the vertical knowledge, because we specialize, the way our business operates is we specialize by industry vertical very tightly because we need to know how they operate. They're saying, you got to come help us, right? You got to come help us pull together multiple pieces. And it's not all going to be Schneider Electric technology. We want to use other people's technology for certain things too. And you need to help us with the best practice and the guidance on how to do it. And, we're building up. We've created a whole new division around this called our Global Solutions Division. And it's one of the 5 divisions in the company. And, we're building up. I'll admit it. We're growing it, but it's growing very fast. And it's probably one of the biggest requirements that our customers are telling us right to our face is something we need to develop even faster.
Because your customers include, correct me if I'm wrong, I would assume include both CIOs as well as the operational technology managers at the same time.
That's correct. We go to the operational guys sort of more historically, but particularly over the last few years, as the software and the platform has become more important, the CIOs have become a much bigger buyer for us.
And 40% of CIOs today, I believe, report to CFOs. So when it comes to sustainability, operational efficiency, security, availability, I suspect you have a captive audience with CFOs as well.
Well, we're getting there, right? But what's happened is we've sort of been, as we started the program out, right? Who's the CMO of Schneider Electric? Fire that guy, right? Because nobody's ever heard of him. Well, part of it is that name recognition we don't necessarily have, and even from a marketing side, right? So let me turn the conversation to marketing for a second, Vali, since you went there. We had about 100-something brands a few years ago.
Wow.
And we've actually now brought it down to about 40. So you may have heard of a company like APC, right? American Power Conversion. Okay, that's us, right? In the U.S., if you're an electrical contractor, when I was interviewing for the job, I asked my guy Nick. I said, "Hey Nick, have you ever heard of Schneider Electric?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Did you ever hear of Square D?" He said, "Sure, of course."
Yeah, sure.
Because Square D is us, right? And if you're in Australia and you go under Clipsal, 95% of the population knows it. If you ask them about Schneider Electric, less than 5% know about it. But it's the same thing. It's the same company, But it's like a confectionery company, right? We have different brands that we do for different markets and different segments. But some of the challenge now is at the higher end, all the retail stuff, okay, that's probably okay because it's more of a distribution product purchase. But at the higher end of the market, and we have companies that do hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business with us, they actually are saying, wait a minute, why are you integrating the APC piece? No, we're like, it's the same company. They said, well, then put it under the same brand, right? Then tell us it's the same company. We want best practices. Yes, we want best-in-class products and all that. But actually, to offer that cross-sell and the solution offering. As a marketeer, I need to figure out, APC's got a very strong reputation in data centers and power management and all of that. If I move them to Schneider Electric, is that the right thing to do? Am I going to lose equity, brand equity? Am I not? So these are really a lot of the challenges we're facing that mean you're not necessarily going to see Schneider Electric in your face all the time, but it's a very complex marketing challenge, and I think part of why I took on this.
That is an unbelievable. Think about, Michael, you have 40 distinct brands. In the two you just mentioned, strong brands under one umbrella. That is, what a tug of war.
Yeah.
That is, that's not easy.
You're a 40,
that's not easy.
So you're a over $30 billion in revenue company with all of these brands and 40 brands, and yet the main brand is kind of hidden. So as a marketer, what are you doing? What are you doing about that? And what's your goal with it?
I don't think...
Well, it's hidden in the U.S., so, right? So, I mean, assuming with technology here, we've got a global audience as well, right? You go to France, obviously more people are going to know us because historically we've been a French company, although I'll argue we're one of the most global companies I've ever seen. You go to China, we have a stronger reputation. You go to Germany, you'll know us under some different names, right? Merton and Elco. And you go to Australia, like I said, Clipsal, and Scandinavia, different. So what we're doing is some of those brands are what we call associated brands. So actually APC by Schneider Electric. So if you buy an APC product, you see the connection to Schneider Electric. Others you don't necessarily know because they're in discrete markets or they're very specific products, and we kind of leave them out there. Well, with the endorsed brand, the first thing I need to do is, before I would even talk about any shift in the brand architecture, I need to grow the master brand. So as a marketeer, my first challenge, talking with Jean-Pascal, my CEO, is we've got to sort of raise the tide of the master brand, and that will raise everything. And then that will give us options, because once we raise the recognition of the master brand, we can talk about some of those other brands, whether we increase the endorsement or the association, or whether we migrate or whatever we do. But for now, it's not even a conversation. And the first thing I need to do in terms of raising the master brand is, well, what does it stand for? And, again, like I sort of alluded to, for the last 10 years, we've been very assertive about building out our technology portfolio, building out our geographic presence. We've doubled in size over the last decade and had, for the last 10 years, over 10 billion euro in acquisitions that now we've just we think we've assembled the company, right? Sure. We've assembled that portfolio. So we couldn't really invest in the story when it was changing. A good example would be in January, we completed the acquisition of a company called Invensys. And in fact, Invensys, which is in Foxborough, right, was actually a number of other brands that were put together, very strong brands, Foxborough, Wonderwear, Triconix, right, very strong brands in their own right. And so that added a whole new element to us of software, because it raised our software revenue significantly, but also put us into process automation, where we had been in sort of discrete manufacturing automation. Right. So, how could I tell the story about industrial automation when I had the discrete, but I knew the process was coming or eventually would come? So now we feel like we've kind of reached the boundaries of something that's a little more complete, stable, offers the right, differentiated portfolio for our customers, mix of OT, IT. Now I can start telling the story. And so what we've been really focused on in my first year is, obviously I have to get to understand the business and make sure all the trucks are running on time and the trains are operating and, the blocking and tackling's going on. But also really preparing for, I think, in 2015, where you'll start to see us raise the profile of that company story, raise that, kind of whole of Schneider Electric story that allows us to really touch along, the industrial automation, the energy management that we do with utilities and customers, buildings management, data centers, and so on, that will allow us to actually combine all those things into one coherent story, which again is a great action. I mean, if you're a marketing guy looking for a challenge, right, it's a great story to try and go, boy, how do you pull all that together? And tell me a year from now, we'll get back together on the show, and you guys can tell me whether I was successful or
I
not.
love that. I'm thinking as you're talking about these challenges, how much fun you're having, because just knowing you, I know that it's in your DNA to tackle tough problems. So I applaud you for that, but I'm not surprised that you're taking on a Herculean task as you are. Now, one of the things you talked about in terms of defining the master brand and what matters to you, you wrote an incredibly insightful blog about the importance of sustainability, and you linked sustainability to profit. But in the blog, you talked about the tension that exists between population density, consumption density, and the impact on the environment. But you included metrics in terms of the importance in retail, customer loyalty, even rental space based on efficiency and sustainable buildings. So can you talk to us a little bit about what clearly is something that you're passionate about, and that being sustainability?
Yeah, so sustainability in some ways has gotten a bad rap as it's green, right? It's good to be green. Okay, well, great, right? It is good to be green, and if I can put in a little plug, we recently won an award, the Platts Energy Award, right, for our own kind of consumption of energy and efficiency internally. So we're eating our own medicine, right? We're taking our own medicine internally, not just as a supplier. It's critical. We're a big company, big infrastructure all around the world, real estate costs, power management, energy consumption, all critical factors for us. But when you start to look at sustainability more in a, let's call it a rational or a financial kind of approach, you start to look at, okay, well, there's two things, right? There's the long term, which in Economics 101 or Accounting 101, it teaches you assume a sustainable enterprise, right? Assume that this is an ongoing concern. Well, we can't always assume that nowadays, right? We can't always assume that, not as a society, because you've got things going on, urbanization, industrialization, digitization. These are all great things that are enriching our lives, yet they're vastly increasing the amount of demand on energy. We're all running 24 hours a day on our mobile phones, our devices, all these kind of things. My number one battle every day is not with my counterparts or my customers. It's with my phone and trying to make sure it's charged all the time, right? So I can be connected. And how many times do I charge it a day? Well, okay, that's an always-on world putting a strain on technology, and then batteries and all that kind of stuff. So we have to find a way to manage our insatiable appetite for energy with these great things that are enriching our lives. More than 50% of the population in the next, I don't know what it is, 40, 50 years, maybe even faster than that, will live in cities, right? Our demand for energy is going to double over the next 40 years. So there's a long-term element of this that, hey, this is not about whether I believe in the melting ice cap or anything like that. I mean, this is a very practical concern over, you can see a resource crunch, you can see the financial elements of it. But the second piece of it, which is much more practical and much more today, you mentioned the idea of rental. Well, if I can manage space better and I can use my dead space better by managing my air conditioning environment, my power, my building security, all these kind of things. If I can start to do that without big bulky machinery, but do it more through sensors, if I can consolidate, locations and whatnot by managing all my assets correctly, by doing things like watching the pattern of usage on the floor. So in our headquarters in France, we actually have what we call the International Customer Lounge. It has a screen there that shows the usage of energy in the building. And what it does is it actually watches the dead spaces in the building and turns down the heating or turns up the heating or the air conditioning or whatever based on the usage of the building. And when you do that over time, short term, okay, it saves me some money, just like a smart thermostat or whatever. But over time, I can actually identify areas of the building that I'm not using, and I can put them to other uses. I can use them as storage. I can put more office space in there. I can see what the hoteling, sort of requirements would be for the building, not just through badges, but actually by watching the the movement of the people. And then you get into all kinds of questions about security and privacy and all those kind of things, which we need to manage appropriately as well. But if you think about really squeezing out more efficiency, that has a direct, kind of correlation to who we are and our profit and all that. And it's also, to add another sort of element to this is the millennials, right? We're a long company. We're trying to bring on a new population of workers.
Absolutely.
I can't pretend that I'm a young guy anymore. I'm already past that sort of that midpoint. But as we bring on these people, or so I'm told, I guess, or my kids tell me, even though they're too young, but is working for a company that they feel is invested not just in them, not just in financial success, but in sort of in a rational way, the society's good as well, is an attractive element. Right. And so look at it in practical terms. We have to hire thousands and thousands of people a year. If we can show them we're doing good things for ourselves, good things for our customers, good for the bottom line, being green can be good for business too. And so we sort of, we look at this in a very practical term. And I tried to do a little research before writing that blog of not just to take a pure financial angle, but take a customer engagement angle, take an angle on long-term sustainability and planetary good. And there's so many overwhelming factors. Bottom line is, being efficient is good for everyone.
We have a question from Twitter from Holger Mueller, who's a great analyst, and he's wondering about it's a mark going back to marketing. He's wondering, as you start centralizing the brand, what happens to the local purchasing decisions? So how do you manage the tension between the central, larger global brand and the local brands as you try to consolidate and make sense of it all?
So this is scary. Holger's another ex-colleague of mine, so a big shout out.
That is scary.
I feel like I'm really old now if I know all these people, but I didn't say centralization of the brand. So to be absolutely clear, what I said was I want to raise the visibility of the master brand. And by raising the visibility of the master brand, that will, in essence, also increase the visibility of all the associated brands. And then it gives us options on what we want to do 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line. But look, I've been around this enough to know that to build a master brand across the world, when we operate in over 100 countries, a company this diverse, of this size, it's going to take me years to build the master brand. So I'm not even, focused too much on centralization per se. It's really just, can I get more people to know who I am? And can I get the people who know who I am to not just know me through one angle, but know all of what I do? Those are the two things I'm trying to accomplish. They may sound simple, they're pretty hard to do, but more reach and more depth. Those are the only two things that I really maniacally focus on every moment of every day.
So then you must be really focused, and I hate to use it because it sounds like such a buzzword nowadays, but digital marketing and digital business transformation, the way you scale your voice of your brand, for example, through social and mobile and apps, like, most enterprise will eventually have their own app stores, and we already talked about big data. And so talk to us a little bit about building the master brand and what that really means in terms of digital marketing.
So we actually have a whole group, one of the interesting debates inside Schneider Electric is, do we talk about digital marketing or do we just talk about marketing? And it was interesting because when I walked in, we talked a lot about digital marketing. Yeah. And there was a group focused on digital marketing. And I said, yeah, there is a group focused on digital marketing. It's called marketing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. In fact, the default answer has to be online, right? The default answer has to be digital, not analog. Now, that's not to say, I'll be very honest, we still spend a lot of money on events. We still spend a lot of money even on print. There are countries that, lo and behold, still want print catalogs, right? They want, like the old Sears catalogs, they want the catalogs of our products send out to them, and they're not quite there. So yeah, we could force them onto digital, but we also have to be responsive to our customers and that kind of thing. We do a lot of third-party trade shows still, because in our industry, or in parts of our industry, that's an important tactic. We're getting more into branded activities, more into branded our own events, private events, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And certainly you've seen just over the last year a real uptick in our digital marketing.
Yeah.
You've seen some of the social marketing come up a little bit, right?
Sure.
You've seen sort of some of those things, and I'll be honest, we're experimenting. I mean,
Sure.
we're not, like, this is not a maniacal, total controlled thing. This is actually trying to get everybody internally to do it and do it organically.
Sure.
We've tried some things that even as a CMO I maybe cringed at a little bit in terms of the content or whatever, but we wanted to experiment and see whether this was something that would generate traffic.
Sure.
And then could we turn the traffic into demand or not? And I had to hold on a little bit and go, no, that's not very corporate, that's not very enterprise, but sort of let it go through and covered my eyes and hope that nobody would come after me or anything. But it's worked, because it has shown us some things that work, that don't work. And again, we have a lot of engineers, long life cycles of products, all those kind of things from history. And so this digital world, the pace it works at, is a cultural challenge for us. So there's two things that we've done. One, we show them that it works, right? So we're now not trying to do the big overall rebrand like I did at Unify and that kind of thing. Is really trying to put stuff into market now. In 2015, you see a lot more into market that works, and just get stuff out and then prove it and then build on that. But the other thing we've done, and we have a real focus on our own people, is we've made the internal transformation first. So we actually have a community, an internal social community, where people blog, have collaboration spaces, work, all that. We've got a Jive system that we call Spice internally. Yep. That is used by the mass of the population. And the executives are more comfortable going on to Spice and posting and doing all these kind of things than they are actually externally. Sure. And so what we've done is we've actually used that internal transformation first to say, look, it's not bad, it doesn't hurt, right. it doesn't whatever, and now we're starting to shift a lot of that energy and attention externally.
Sure.
So, we have a long way to go in that transformation, but I'm really excited about the steps that we've taken so far.
Michael, how many multi-billion-dollar, in this case $30 billion CMOs who are on a Google Hangout Live, blog, engage on Twitter? I mean, I can probably count on a few hands, right? Jonathan Becker of SAP, Chris Hummel of Schneider Electric. I'm telling you, you are living digital proof, and you're doing it. So kudos to you. There are not too many CMOs of companies of your size that are actually, doing what they say the company needs to do and leading by example. So we appreciate that.
So we're almost out of time. And maybe before we end, share with us some of the digital lessons challenges and lessons that you have learned that other CMOs that are watching might take away.
Well, the first thing is you got to be okay to fail, right? You're going to have a few bombs there, right? You're going to write a couple blogs nobody listens to, nobody watches, right? You're going to it's hard. I mean, most of us are introverts as a sort of a DNA, and we crave attention, and if your followership's not going up, it doesn't mean that people don't love you, right? I mean, you have to work at it. You have to be afraid to fail. You have to fail fast and move forward. You have to be consistent. I mean, one of the things I beat myself up about is I love to write blogs. I love to I've got so much I feel like I want to say and all that, but I'm just not doing it regularly enough. And it's not that I'm paying the price, but I certainly could be even more present if I were more active about it. If I were writing a weekly blog, I'd get more attention on it because you get the network effect, and I probably write one every couple of weeks or whatever. So if you're going to do it, you've got to commit to it, right? You really got to take time. You've got to commit to it, and the other thing, which is a big jump for a lot of people, is at a time when budget pressures are constantly coming in, when marketing is being challenged in what I call it's the definitional crisis. What is marketing versus what is sales versus what is IT? When the buying process is shifting, online and before the sale, is that good for marketing, or does that mean sales is going to knock marketing out of the way? I don't know the answer to that. In some cases, it's different. But you've got to be committed to the fact that the buyer no longer allows you to control their journey. That you have to actually map to them, and you have to just be present where they are. And we've never had the tools able to do that before. So, I made peace with that. I wrapped my ego away that I couldn't convince millions of people to do it the way that I wanted them to do, and instead said, I'm going to give myself in, and I'm going to try and map to where they want me to be. And I think that, if I could get the psychology of my fellows out there, I think that's one of the first things you just have to psychologically get over.
So pay attention and listen to the empowered consumer and recognize that they're the boss.
That's right.
Control is an illusion.
And it's
Absolutely.
True in business to business as much as it is in business
Life.
to consumer and in life.
Yeah, that was awesome advice. That was tremendous advice to marketeers. I hope you're watching. That was great advice, Chris. It's true. But it does require a level of discipline and precision marketing unless you can have a practice of market segmentation, account segmentation, buyer segmentation, understand the personas, and then build the buyer's process map. It's tough to deliver that relevant message at the right time, across the right channel to the right audience. It just requires a tremendous amount of discipline. It's not easy. And to do it for 41 brands, yeah, good luck to you. Why don't you have enough time to blog?
Go figure, right? I'm gonna talk to some people here. Maybe we'll consolidate our brands just so I can become a social guy. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I'm just wondering how many hours a day you sleep. It should be about like 2.
Not many.
Well, unfortunately, we're just out of time, and I want to thank Chris Hummel, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Schneider Electric, for joining us today.
Chris, you were awesome. Thank you for dropping all that science on us in 45 minutes. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the invitation and appreciate the time.
And come back again. And we will be off for 2 weeks, and our next guest at the beginning of January is going to be the CMO of Adobe. So we're going to be going from infrastructure to graphics in 2 weeks. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Vala, as always, it's a pleasure to see you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well, Mike.
And we'll see everybody next time on the other side. Hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.